Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you haven't been here before, I'm Jamie. I read a ton of books, and this is my check-in for week 4 of 2025. It is the 28th of January, therefore it is the end of the 4th week, and I've been doing some reading. I actually don't have any new print books to show you that I've finished, because the one print book that I definitely finished went back to the bookstore and is now on the staff recommendation shelf, which is nice, but it's not here. And that was the Buffalo Hunters book. That it was about 2 units of black soldiers that were formed during the Civil War on the Union side, and following the Civil War they were still in operation and hadn't been disbanded, and so they were sent out to do other stuff, primarily dealing with the Indian Wars out west, and Reconstruction in the South, especially in Texas. I don't think I would want to be a black soldier in a Union unit doing Reconstruction in the South. That sounds really uncomfortable. So that situation was an interesting one in this book. And then out in the West, so the Indian Wars, I don't usually think of that as a proper war because it's not really represented that way very often. But reading about it in this book, it sure sounds more like an actual war. Like, whole groups of Native Americans had not conceded their, rights to the land and were fighting back and had not decided they were conquered yet. So yeah, it's definitely a book that gives you more of a perspective of why it's called the Indian War. Because, yeah, there were campaigns where it was a large number of native soldiers against a relatively similar sized unit of American soldiers, and they didn't always the American soldiers, despite their armaments, despite all of their modern technology and modern everything, did not always win. Yeah, so that was interesting. I would have liked more pictures, I think, in that book. But for what it was a reprint of a book from the 50s. So they weren't going to throw in all sorts of extra pictures that wouldn't have been available. So for what it was really good. So the book I've been trying to finish today, you guys have seen this one before, is this one, the Untold Story of the Talking Book. I'm not sure how untold some of this story is. It's starting to be a little bit tedious, which is why I haven't finished it yet. But I'm also fairly well informed about things to where some of this was not new. A lot of the details are interesting, but it's not a story that's gripping when you're reading it. For me, anyway. Yet. I've gotten about 80 pages into this book. And it is, I'm thinking in the 300s. Well, it's in notes in the 300s. Let's see where the text ends. It might be closer to half than I thought. 270. So I'm not at half, but it's not as terrible as all that. But I did find it interesting which books were recorded first when they started making actual effective phonograph record audiobooks. They didn't call them that yet, but audiobooks on stacks of phonograph records. They did. Let's see. The first novel recorded was Gladys Hasty Carroll's "As the Earth Turns," a best-selling novel about Maine farm life that had been nominated for a Pulitzer. I've never heard of this book, so now I'm gonna have to keep my eyes out for that book, because now I'm curious about why that would be the book they would choose to make the first, audiobook novel with this technology. Yeah, that's fascinating to me. And then they did Rudyard Kipling's The Brushwood Boy, which is a short story, and Cora Jarrett's Night Over Fitch's Pond, which I've also never heard of before. The next 3 works of fiction were all by British authors. E.M. Delafield's The Diary of a Provincial Lady, which I might have. I think I did get a copy of that at some point, maybe in a bag of books sale last year. John Masefield's The Bird of Dawning, never heard of it before. And P.G. Wodehouse, Very Good Jeeves, which, yes, I've read it and listening to the audiobook, and sometimes I use the Jeeves books as bedtime books. So I totally know that book. Which is fun, because I do listen to the audiobook of Very Good Jeeves when I revisit that book. So it's kind of fun. So apparently some of these really big books, they did do phonograph versions out. So they did Gone with the Wind. It was 80 phonograph records. 80 discs to get Gone with the Wind. War and Peace was 118 phonograph discs. So if you wanted to listen to War and Peace in this technology, you would have a stack of 118 discs to actually finish the book. And then they did the Bible, of course. 169 discs for the Bible, which I'm betting they did King James Version, given the era. But yeah, so interesting. There are paragraphs every so often where they're worth reading out loud and sharing and all that. So I just need to focus on it and actually finish this book, so I can go back to the history section of the bookstore with a recommendation on it. And I might borrow some of the phrasing from Storygraph to kind of do these recommendations, so that it's a slow-paced history book. Because I don't think it's a bad book, but it is not as exciting as some of the others I've read. I also brought home 4 new books to read to go back to the history section. The one I've been starting with tonight is Civil Wars, A History and Ideas by David Armitage. This is a history of Civil War. And given how problematic American politics has become in the past 2 weeks, we're back to a point where a lot of people are recognizing the divisiveness of everything, and that Civil War is not really out of the possible imaginings for the future of our country anymore again. the things that are going on are insane, and there are people that think that they're amazing, and that's a huge divide. And obviously, at that point, what the people who like what's happening think we want for our country is not the same country as what many of the rest of us liked about our country. And that's a big enough division that if it's real, if it's not been manufactured by politicians wanting power, could lead to some interesting events in the future. So yeah, I'm a little curious about civil wars and how they happen, and stuff like that. And I read a lot about fascism already, 2 presidential terms ago. So now we're on to civil wars. There will probably be more Civil War books over the next couple months while I'm exploring this topic. Just as I did a lot of World War I books and World War II books during COVID. I got into a kick and I was reading all of them. The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, by the way, by Scherer, is really good. Yeah. So if you like long books, or if you've been thinking about tackling the Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, that was one that I read when I was on a different, but similar motivated sort of, reading kick. It was one of my topics for about 4 months. Anyway, another book that's Civil War related from the Civil War section of our history section is In the Waves, My Quest to Solve the Mystery of a Civil War Submarine. Because I really like the Clive Cussler Sea Hunters books, which are like a short story sort of fictionalization of the last moments of a ship or whatever it is that's crashing or wrecking or sinking. And then a nonfiction account of actually looking for and investigating the wreckage. Because Clive Cussler actually did fund and support real life shipwrecks and crashes and things like that, where there's wreckage to be discovered and to locate and investigate and explore. So just like Numa in his books, there's a real life version of that. And yeah, so I love the Sea Hunters books. So this one appealed to me because it reminded me, at least on what it says on the cover, of that kind of book. We'll see. I haven't read it yet. But if it's like those, then it'll be fun to feature on our staff recommendations shelf, which we just established. Quite literally, we started our staff recommendation shelf in the history section on the weekend. And already today, several days later, half of the books we put on the staff recommendation shelf sold. So that was fun. So yeah, we're like, yay! If that worked, maybe we can do it again. We've been told that the history section has been selling more books than they ever remember before. So whatever we're doing, it's working. But it does remain a lot of assigned reading. Here's another assigned reading book that I've chosen for myself. This is Finland's War of Choice, The Troubled German-Finnish Coalition in World War II. So not Civil War. This one's one that sort of grew out of my interest in what happens next between Russia and the countries near Ukraine. Because Finland is one of the countries that when Russia invaded Ukraine, they were really worried about where does this go next, and are they going to be invaded as well? and it's not exactly clear whether they are safe or not, and I would imagine not. I can't imagine that Russia would stop at Ukraine if they succeed in taking the Ukraine. So it would be nice to know more about Finland. And I don't know a lot about Finland. I know what I've picked up from watching the news when the war in Ukraine was more in the news. Yeah. So I, being me, am not comfortable with that level of lack of knowledge about something. So I don't know if this is going to be enough for me or if I'm going to be hunting down more books on Finland. Probably I'll be reading more books on Finland if I can find them. But at the moment, this was the only one that said Finland on the cover in the history section. So I'll start with that. And then the last book for my assigned reading that I brought home today is this one, Washington's Spies. The Story of America's First Spy Ring by Alexander Rose. This one is about establishing spies to know what the British are doing. You know, Washington, like the dude, not the state or the city. So, yeah, at this time, so 1700s, gentlemen don't do spying. So, gentlemen that would like to support the cause are not going to be comfortable becoming spies and being that kind of dishonest. So that's as far as I've gotten so far, is one guy has stepped up and said, okay, I'll do it. But there are a lot of other guys that could also have done it, and they just like, nope, not it. I'm a gentleman. That is not for me. So, unfortunately, that's as much as I got out of it so far, because I was trying to read it during my break at the bookstore, and I was really not focusing very well. But it was really an interesting book, and it was well written for the pages that I tried to read, so hopefully. The book that I got for my free book for my latest 6 hours, I did 6 hours in one day this time, because we didn't have enough people staffed for the later part of the day. So I did all 6 hours of today's shift, which also means that I'll have half a book's worth by the end of the week, because I have another 3-hour shift, possibly this weekend. So yay, more books. But I picked out this omnibus edition or collected edition of Iris Murdoch. It has A Severed Head, The Black Prince, and The Sea. For the Boxhall's 1001 Books You Must Read Before You Die list. I know at least one, maybe all three of those books are on the list, because I went looking for Murdoch a while ago to see if I could find any in the library, and I couldn't find anything. So that is a satisfying thing. Also satisfying in the Boxhall's reading project is I've gotten permission to set up a shelf, and I know which shelf I'm going to be setting it up on for books that are on the list. Because there are a lot of books that are older than the store generally stocks in the main section of the store, but they're not old enough to be in the classics and literature section. And some of them, like, the Pynchon books, they don't appeal to everybody. Some of them have been banned and challenged because they're gross. Atrocity Exhibition, anyone? I've read some really gross books while reading the Boxhall list. So some of them, while I would champion everyone's right to read them if they want to, I'm not recommending them. But if they come in at the store, they will be on the box all list shelf. So if people need them to read the list, they will be available. Because otherwise, I have access to them because I can pull my free book every 6 hours from the back room as well as from the main store. So, and they don't really care which part of the store I pick my free book from, which is nice. So I can get the books that I need for reading the list. But I feel bad for everybody that might also be reading the list in our area that can only access the books in the back on Bag of Books days. And there's only 2 of them, or 2 weekends of Bag of Books sales in every year. So, yeah. Now I can make all the books that are on the list available to everybody else on a shelf. And there will be books that are on the box all list in the rest of the store. Just the ones that are otherwise not usually available will be available now on the box all shelf. If there's another place that they already are, that they're quite happy there, they can stay there. But it also means that we don't have to have so much overcrowding in some other areas where they are crowded. So that's exciting. That was a new development just as I was leaving today. So I haven't even set up the shelf yet, but that will be next time. And I did get some more books that I rescued off of the recycling shelf. So I have more books to read. Did I need more books to read? Of course. Including one that is on the box all list that I could have sworn I had a copy and I can't find it anywhere. I was going to read Saul Bellow because I have an arc that I need to get to of like collected essays and stuff. So I was going to do a Saul Bellow, I don't know, I guess they're calling it a deep dive or anyway, a binge. And I was going to read this one to start it and I couldn't find it. So now I have it. It is a bit, gnarly, but it's not falling apart. It's just not pretty. I've read a few John Hersey books, but I'd never heard of this one before. So The Child Buyer by John Hersey. This is an author that I was shelving because now I have the M's that I'm kind of taking care of. So I've never read her, but I got A Quiet Drink by Deborah Mogok. Yeah, Mogok. If there's a better way to say her name, I don't know how to say it. Mogok. Anyway, we'll find out. Maybe I'll find an audiobook and they'll tell me how to pronounce her name. In any case, I know we have quite a few of her books. I'd never heard of her before I took over the M's, so I'll read a book by her and see if she's any good. Another book that I'd not heard of before by James Hilton. Lost Horizon, the haunting novel of love in Shangri-La. Ew. Do I know James Hilton for other books? I have this feeling that I've come across him before, but don't remember where now. And then just some random cozy mystery-ish by Mystery Writers of America Grandmaster Q Pentecost, which sounds hopeful. Murder in High Places, a Pierre Chambrun mystery. This one is warped, so that's why it ended up on the recycling. It got damp, but it's not moldy, it's just warped. So yeah, that one will be fun. And then I have a Carl Hyacin book, Double Whammy, which is very cheerful and will be useful for a readathon prompt sometime. And the short stories of Leo Tolstoy, one step closer to having finished the author. And then this one is science fiction short stories, The Halfling and Other Stories by Lee Brackett, with a questionably naked woman holding a dragon. She's not totally naked. She has a piece of jewelry over her crotch. And she's strategically holding a dragony thing in front of her boobs. So, okay. So this is one where we have to read the book to find out if there's a reason why this lady is standing undressed on the cover holding a dragony thing. So those are always entertaining. I've read quite a few where there was no scene in the entire book where that was called for. So, curious. But it's sci-fi, it's short stories, and I will read them. It's actually, for that matter, yellow all across the back and the spine. The only part that's not all the way yellow is the front, where it's just the text and kind of the woman, and yeah, that's a yellow base. So I don't think I'm going to get to it next month, but for my own self, I would count it for yellow, even if I wouldn't count it for yellow for a readathon where it's points determined by yellow. So it might happen. Anyway, so those are books I got. I have a few more that I added to my little free library stack, but they're duplicates of stuff that I already had. But yeah, I do rescue books that I've already got or that I've already read and would not otherwise want from the recycling, so that they can go into little free libraries. I did get a copy of Ayn Rand Anthem, which is short. If you are only familiar with Ayn Rand from Atlas Shrugged, you might be surprised to know the Anthem is actually quite short. It's a sort of book where I'm not sure that you would actually get much of Rand's philosophy from reading it, but she sure thought you could. So, I don't know. I might reread it before I send it on, just because I haven't read it in a while. I used to be a big Ayn Rand fan in high school and college, and unlike a lot of people that could say that, I actually do still like the underlying philosophy, and I still own and reread Atlas Shrugged. But I skipped the big speech by John Galt. I don't need to read it again. It's boring. It's 42 pages, and it's boring. And there are some things that bug me. Rand's gender concept is very dated and very misogynist, and I grumble about that all the time whenever I read it, because she's a woman and she's still got this horrible patriarchal misogynist sort of gender relations, and it was not necessary. So there's things that I gripe about very much, but yeah, my take on Rand and her philosophy is very nuanced. Anyway, so I might be rereading Anthem, and especially if there's a rereading prompt that I need a book to read, I will probably use that one so that I can revisit it before I give it away in a little free library. Anyway, so yeah, that's pretty much me. The kittens have gone on to a shelter to find their own people. So it's blessedly quiet. I still have 3 adult male cats extra inside right now in various parts of the house where they don't mix. 2 of them need to be fixed. 1 of them might be already. And 2 of them are very friendly, and we want to get them into a rescue. one of them has a tragic story where he should be way more friendly than he is, but he got chucked out when his people moved and grr. So I don't know if he's going to tame down or if at this point he just is going to be fixed and put back outside. But, yeah, so we still have some extra felines that we're providing house room and food for, and we'll see how long that lasts. Hopefully we'll be able to stand them long enough to get the boys fixed that need to be. One of them is really grumpy about something. I don't think that it's about not being allowed outside, but he's grumpy and he's pooping in really annoying places. So, yeah. So we'll see how long this arrangement lasts. But theoretically, they're going to be with us until they go somewhere better. Realistically, if it takes too long, they might just go back outside, and we'll try this again later. So we'll see. And hopefully we don't have new kittens for a while so we can get a break, because it's always crazy once kitten season starts because it's almost never ending. So as soon as one litter leaves, the next litter is coming in. And quite often there's already 2 litters going on at once, and yeah, so a couple months break will be nice. And this is one of the hats that I was making during sprints this last week. So it is a green and pink and kind of brick red and kind of round on the top. Sort of a slouchy hat, just not very big and slouchy, because I don't do big and slouchy. And might as well also show the other hats that I finished. This one's a gray hat that I was working on last week during sprints. And there's the center start. And this one I did over the weekend on sprints. And this one I tacked the brim down so it's actually crocheted all the way around. So the final row makes the brim folded over permanently, because I like having a brim I can hold on to. I did the same for this one as well. This one, though, is just folded over. But I did a row around the edge that makes it so it naturally folds out. So that it stays like that, so that if I'm wearing it and walking in wind or I don't know, whatever. I've had hats where I could have sworn that the wind couldn't possibly make the brim do anything because it's a knit hat or crocheted hat. But it's really awkward when the brim flops down over your eyes and you're carrying stuff. So most of my hats now, I'm making it so that can't happen. But yeah, so that's what I've been working on during sprints when I'm crocheting and listening to audiobooks. I have more of this yarn. So I'm actually making a scarf with the rest of it. And I tried another texture that I did not like. So I'm doing, this is the end, and I'll do the same thing on the other end. And the middle is just kind of a half double crochet, alternating with chains, with 3 half double crochets in a row for the edges to make it a little bit more structure. So this, plus the hat I'm wearing, will be a set. And these are baubles, I think. They're not popcorn stitches. I know I didn't do that. So I'll have to remember which kind of stitch I did on those. And I think they're double crochet. Anyway. So both ends may not match perfectly, but I need to use up the yarns that I have that have wool in them, because otherwise our climate is really dry most of the year. And it's really conducive to the little carpet moths that get into your yarn stash and eat your yarn. They don't like acrylic, so my acrylic yarn is fine. And it might get, moths that are living in it, but they're not going to be eaten. But all of these that are wool blend, I need to use them. Once it's a hat, I can wash the hat, but washing skeins is tricky. So anyway, that's what I'm working on. I will let you guys get back to your reading. I'm getting right back to my reading. And I will catch you guys again for my end of the month and February TBR videos, which are coming up shortly. It's the 28th, so we have 29, 30, 31. So in 4 days, I'd better be putting up some more videos, or have already done them. So I will see you guys soon. Let me know what you are reading, or if you've read anything that I've showed or talked about in this video. Have you been making any hats? Let me know. I love seeing everybody's hats. And I will catch you guys in the next video or on sprints somewhere. Bye, guys!